Hi, everyone. This is Catherine Moody, and I want to share with you one of the most common issues and how to fix it that corporate recruiters have. And this is one of 5 time-saving hacks that are in my consultative recruiter online masterclass. So one of the things that adds the most time and the most work to you is really totally unnecessary. I'm going to tell you how to fix it. So the bottom line is that if you feel you waste a lot of time chasing your hiring manager for feedback, for decisions, for next steps, to get a meeting, if you're chasing your hiring manager, I want to tell you the good news and the bad news is you're not alone. So can you fix it? Yes, you can, and you must. Because what most recruiters are having to resort to in order to keep their recruitment moving is what actually plays into the stereotype of being an order taker. I'm going to tell you about that. So just a little bit about me. I'm not going to read that to you because you can read. But the piece that's important is some feedback that I got from someone just recently who had taken my training. And his feeling is that my tactics were practical because they are. They're very simple. You may even say to yourself, well, it can't be this easy, but it is. And a lot of recruitment training does not tell you how to build relationships of credibility and visibility and influence with your hiring managers. And without that, then we are kind of relegated to pretty much an order taker stereotype, even though you're doing great work in filling positions. So I do want to make sure, first of all, let me say this. I'm not meaning to throw anybody under the bus. And frankly, I think you're a superstar to be recruiting in a corporate environment. And I know you're filling positions, you're bringing great people in, and you're getting hires. But we don't always get a relationship just as a result of having done those things. And man, oh man, I mean, everything is changing, isn't it? And not only do we have what's happening now, but think about it. You know, what do you want to be in 30, 60, 90, 180 days? You know, when we come out of this, what additional skills do you want to have? Because that's also going to be a tumultuous time. And just briefly, the reason for the gears, I see recruiting as a series of gears. You know, a lot of times people think of recruiting as a very linear process, but it's not. There are lots of interconnected pieces, and most people don't understand that, except that I know you do because you're a recruiter the same way I am. So the recruiting process is very complex and multi-layered. Let me help you with it. So initially, some concerns that you may have about some of the AI tools and some of the things that are coming online is that it is even further reinforcing an image that recruiters are resume pushers. You know, with all these new tools, hiring managers are thinking, well, gee, you know, how hard can it be? Now you've got all these extra tools, and they don't understand all the pieces and that interconnection of the gears. So let me share first of 5 consultative recruiter principles, and that is questions, the power of questions, and they are really your secret strategy. Because in the world today with short attention spans and everything that people have going on, and you know as well as I do, hiring managers often think that recruiting is your job and their job is running the business. And when you try to tell them, especially if it starts to disintegrate into a lecture, which I understand because what you're saying is important. It can be frustrating because you've maybe said it multiple times. And when you tell people today, it simply won't sell. And so here's what I've adopted. If you start saying something that you've heard yourself say before to this person, I'm going to suggest you not say it. This is what to do instead. But I think this is an important thing to realize, that the reason that a lot of times people tune you out is because what we're saying has been relegated to boring. They've heard it before, they don't understand it, they don't really understand what you do. And so it isn't that you're boring or that you're inconsequential, it is simply that it's not capturing their attention. To them, it's boring. So what I want you to think about is this instead. Because when you ask questions, you get multiple benefits. The 3 key ones are you get their attention. So if you say, well, George, and then the question that I'm going to give you, it gets their attention. And we are by nature, and probably because mom told us, we are geared to respond to questions. The second is that when you ask a question, you are actually controlling the conversation. And if you don't believe this, when you're having a conversation with someone, ask in a way that's not rude or interruptive, but ask a question that's on an entirely different topic. And you know what you'll see? That person goes to answer your question. It's very rare that someone says, well, where did that question come from? We are by nature geared to answer questions. And when you're asking the questions, you are controlling the conversation. You cannot control a conversation by telling people. To tell won't sell. And as a result, you're getting them now involved. You're getting them involved in what it is that you want them to be involved in. You're getting them involved in coming up with solutions. It is one of the best ways to build your consultative recruiter reputation, to have more influence and credibility. And it can feel like you're giving that all up, but when you try this, just try it, this one technique, you're going to see that it makes a huge difference. So here is the hack to get your hiring manager to commit and stick. Because when feedback is delayed, you have to keep candidates warm. That's extra work. You may lose candidates and have to start sourcing, extra work. You spend time trying to track your hiring manager down, extra work. So what happens is your time to fill expands. And you know, I've never seen a time to fill statistic or scorecard that has little asterisks that say, it took this long to fill the role because the hiring manager went dark for 2 weeks or entirely ghosted us in the middle of the process. And so what happened? Nobody is happy. So what do we do instead? So if this feels like you a lot of the time, here's what I'm going to suggest. And by the way, this is my flagship technique. I developed this long ago when the partners at Deloitte & Touche were very successfully ignoring my requests for feedback, even though we desperately needed to hire. And this is what I did. It's called getting the commitment and then getting them to keep it. Listen, I understand just because we got it doesn't mean the first time that they're going to keep it. All right. So here's what you do. Let's say you're sending resumes and you want the hiring manager to get back to you, or you have someone being interviewed and you want the hiring manager to give you feedback. So what you say is, when do you think you'll be able to get back with me with, feedback on the resumes, thoughts on the candidates, when you want to move forward, how you want to move forward, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And now here's really important. You must stop talking. And a lot of times what we do is we want to give them options. Now you could get back to me in a day. Could you email me? And we also want to explain why we're asking. And I don't think you have to do any more of those, we're going to lose the candidate, it's going to take too long. Again, if you've heard yourself say this before to this person, don't say it again. So just stop talking. You've asked a question. We are geared to answer questions, and now you've given them space to answer the question. And so they say, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is. And I'll do another quick video on what to do when they give you something that's outrageous, like, in 7 months. But now they've said, I'll get back to you by Tuesday, end of 4 o'clock. I'll get back to you by 4 o'clock. So now what happens? They didn't get back to you on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So here's what I'm going to suggest that you do. At 4:05, you ask the hiring manager, and I'm going to suggest that you do voicemail or face-to-face. Emails, text, not quite as effective because they need to hear that you are working with them, that you're not PO'd at them, which you certainly have a right to be, but it needs to be a part of building the relationship. And what I'm after is to help you be seen as a true business partner, because they don't do this to a lot of other people. They don't make a commitment and then not keep it, or at least they don't do that without saying, I'm sorry I told you 4 o'clock on Tuesday, but it looks like I'm going to need another day. Very few hiring managers will do that with you, but they do it with other business partners. So here's how you start stepping into that role as a business partner. So you say, well, when we spoke, you thought it would work for you to get back to me on the resumes, the interviews, whatever it is, by 4 o'clock on Tuesday. That doesn't seem to have worked for you. What would be better? And then, of course, the magic, just stop talking. So leave it in a voicemail. It's better if you can talk voice to voice, even if it's not face to face. So what you are doing is you're getting the hiring manager, first of all, involved in making the decision. And I know people say, well, the service level agreement, they agreed to 48 hours. Well, if that's working for you, we don't have to be talking about this, right? But most people will admit, maybe not in a public forum, that SLAs and those agreements really don't work. So what would be better? And then stop talking. So let me tell you a couple of four success tips. I know it seems like it would be fast. Just tell them what you want. And interestingly, when I first started talking about this, I was on a recruiting blog and I shared this with people, and the owner of the blog went berserk. And he said, you never ask hiring managers. You always tell hiring managers. And I said, you don't work in a corporate recruiting environment. He was part of an executive search firm. And you and I both know that sometimes the people who come from the outside get much more respect and credibility with your hiring managers than you might be getting. And he said, I just tell them what to do. And I think to myself, I sincerely doubt that's the case. But of course, I didn't write that. So I know it seems like if you just tell them, but if you've been telling them and it's not working, let's try a different approach. Remember, to tell won't sell. Now, it's really important, too, that when they miss that deadline, you take action and you ask that second question, what would be better, immediately. Because if you don't, you've just trained them to totally ignore you. One of the recruiters that I was coaching said, he said, I never have this problem. And I'm going, I'd like to hear what you're doing. He said, I email and I call and I spend a week doing that. And then eventually, when I really need information, I show up at their office. And they know that when I show up at their office, I need answers. And that's how I get answers. And I said, do you realize that you have just trained your hiring managers to ignore you, to ignore your requests in email, phone, text, whatever you're doing until you show up? So you've trained them to ignore you until that last critical moment. I don't think that's the way we want to do it. Who's got time to do that? So I want you to make sure that you don't go back to old behaviors. It will take a little while for some of your hiring managers to get this. You just keep asking that last question if they keep missing. Many hiring managers really adjust to this amazingly easy. And part of the reason is that this is such a subtle question. It's such a subtle strategy to start getting people to engage. One recruiter, young man in Texas, I could never get him to stop calling me ma'am. He said, ma'am, he said, I could never ask my hiring manager to do this. And what he did realize is that the VP of talent acquisition, who had asked me to work with him, said, we have a real problem. He's doing pretty good work. He was relatively new. But the hiring managers are not getting back to him, and his time to fill just goes on and on and on. It's really jeopardizing our statistics and our business in that area. And there was one hiring manager that he really was very intimidated by. So I said to him, listen, just try this. And if she gets upset with you, you can just tell her I made you do it and no harm, no foul. And so the next week when he talked, he said to me, she didn't even, first of all, really acknowledge that I had asked a new question, but she gave me an answer and she wasn't unhappy about it at all. And he was so surprised that he didn't have to follow up with her. So this really works if you're just really gentle, not worried about it. We'll call it the Invisalign braces approach to getting a commitment. And I am going to again stress that you want to ask these questions, phone, face-to-face, whatever, but just don't email or text because it's just such a bad way to do it. It will not move the needle very far on your new relationship of credibility and influence. So hopefully we straightened out a few things, right? As I mentioned, I have more of these, but I think this is a key one. And if you try it and you see how it starts to decrease the amount of time you have to spend chasing your hiring manager, and isn't it kind of embarrassing to have to be chasing people down time after time after time to get what you need in order to fill their positions? I think it is. So I want you to, first of all, be sure that you try this technique. If you have any questions, you can email me, and then check out the Consultative Recruiter online video masterclass that I have available for you. And the link will be in somewhere somewhere in the post that has this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know how it goes. I wish you the very best, and take care, be well, and I hope you have an adequate toilet paper supply.